Do you ever find yourself doubting the truth? Wondering if what you experienced was real or just a dream? That's exactly what the characters face in the stunning thriller sci-fi Inception. Film connoisseurs, especially of the science fiction genre, are by no means strangers to this film. Directed by Christopher Nolan and starring Leonardo DiCaprio, this movie has a complicated plot line. But don't worry, you'll understand after watching this video, so let's get straight to the plot line. The film Inception invites us to visit a time where people can share dreams. At that time, people developed technology that made a dream within the reach of more than one person. Through this technology, many people can experience and share the same dream. This is Dom Cobb and his team. Cobb and his team are extractors. Extractor is a label for a group of people who benefit from sharing the dream of doing spy work. Simply put, Cobb and his team extract valuable ideas or information from the target. They do this by tapping into the target's subconscious. So the target is not aware of what they are experiencing because they feel they are only dreaming. At the beginning of the story, we see Cobb and his team at work. They focus on a wealthy businessman named Saito. Cobb and his team have just received ideas or information from Mr. Saito, but one of Cobb's friends, Nash, betrayed him. This made Saito realize what Cobb was planning to do when they met his dream. In addition, the main reason for the failure of Cobb and his team is the appearance of a woman named Mal. Mal is Cobb's late wife. However, Mal often appears in Cobb's dreams. Because Cobb himself hides the projection of Mal's character in a space of the subconscious that cannot be erased, namely memories.
You know that I can't trust you anymore.
After the failure of his work against Mr. Saito, Cobb and his group intend to leave and escape. However, Mr. Saito actually met him and offered him a partnership. Mr. Saito, realizing the size of Cobb and his team, Saito wants to hire them to do something against a man named Robert Fisher. Robert Fisher is the son of Maurice Fisher. Meanwhile, Maurice Fisher has a company that competes with Mr. Saito. Mr. Saito knew that Maurice would leave all his property and possessions to Robert. Saito wants Cobb and his team to instill confidence in Robert to break up his father's company. Maurice's company will therefore no longer be a rival of Mr. Saito again. Mr. Saito also knows about Cobb's past, who becomes a suspect in Mal's suicide. Saito therefore promises to remove the criminal status of Cobb and his associates if Cobb is ready to accept his offer and succeed in his job. Cobb accepted Mr. Saito and started assembling his team. Currently, he already had Arthur as his partner. Arthur acts as the provider of all needs related to the missions of Cobb and his group. Then a man named Eames, who is a master of disguise. Typically, Eames is tasked with stealing the identity of someone close to the target and using that identity to influence the target. In addition, Cobb also had a friend named Yusuf who was a chemist. Yusuf was in charge of giving her a potion that would put her to sleep and enter the same dream realm. Unfortunately, Cobb lost Nash, who is an architect and can design dreams or build a subconscious that they enter together. Because of this, Cobb met Professor Stephen Miles, who was his teacher and father-in-law. Miles then recommended a woman named Ariadne for an architect position on the Cobb team. Cobb asks Ariadne to draw a maze and test it. Cobb accepts Ariadne as a partner if she can draw a maze that Cobb cannot solve. Ariadne soon graduates and joins Cobb and his team. Afterwards, Cobb and his team began making various preparations for their mission. They planned to enter Robert's subconscious and transport him to the third layer of dreams. Cobb's colleagues began to do their work. Cobb also gave Ariadne input on the dream design she would create. Before we continue, let's look at some rules for sharing dreams. First, 5 minutes in the real world equals 1 hour in the dream world. Second, a dream architect should not design a dreamscape with all the known aspects of reality, because that would cause confusion. Third, in the usual case, dying in a dream means waking up in the real world. However, in third-level dreams, the risk of death casts one into limbo, an infinite subconscious that has the potential to forget that they are still dreaming. To suit the conditions and situation of their mission, Cobb suggested Ariadne create a totem. A totem is something that can be a sign when one is in a dream reality. Because this totem is personal, everyone working as an extractor usually has their own totem. Cobb himself has the peak as his totem. While the top keeps spinning and stabilizing, Cobb keeps dreaming. However, when the top flips and loses its balance and stops in normal time, Cobb wakes up and is in the real world. Furthermore, before killing the dream projection to wake up and return to reality, this time they used a shock known as a kick. When everything was ready, Cobb and his team with Mr. Saito starts the mission. They entered the plane with Morris's body. Robert Fisher also boarded the plane as a passenger. During the flight, Cobb and his team, including Mr. Saito and Robert, fell asleep after drinking Yusuf's potion. They all show the first set of dreams, which are Joseph's dreams. Cobb, his team, and Saito pursue Robert and kidnap Morris's heir. But suddenly a group of armed forces appeared and shot them. As it turns out, the armed forces are a defense mechanism of Robert's subconscious. She also realized that rival Mr. Saito also hired the services of an extractor and trained Robert to have a defense mechanism in his subconscious. During the attack, Mr. Saito is injured. Cobb says Saito won't die in his dream this time. The power of Yusuf's sedative means they don't wake up dead this time, but instead drift in limbo.
Right, so what happens when we die?
We drop into limbo.
Are you serious?
Limbo?
The mission must continue. In the first layer of the dream, Eames disguises himself as Robert's uncle named Browning. He tells Robert to reconsider his father's wishes. Then, they drugged Robert Fisher again and put in a second layer of dreams, which were Arthur's dreams. Well, they are at the hotel. Cobb meets Robert and says that Browning kidnapped Robert. Cobb also believes he is the protector of Robert's dream. In fact, Cobb and his team's mission was almost a success at the time. They drug Robert again and they go into the third layer of dreams, which are the Eames dreams.
Cobb? Cobb? What's down there?
They are now in the winter hospital. As planned, Robert meets his father's projection at this location, but Robert's subconscious defense force rises again and attacks them. Meanwhile, Yusuf, who was driving a van in the first dream layer, had an accident. In the second layer of the dream, Arthur tries to block Robert's subconscious while timing the detonation of dynamite he has placed in various locations. And Eames appears with Robert in his dream on the third level. However, Mal suddenly appears in Eames' dream and promptly kills Robert. Cobb then kills Mal and is distraught, thinking their mission has failed.
Eames.
However, Ariadne found a solution. He invites Cobb to enter the dream layer, as he is certain that Mal and Robert will meet in Cobb's dream. So, Cobb and Ariadne entered the realm, which turned out to be Limbo. Then Cobb also revealed his story with Mal to Ariadne. Ariadne then finds Robert and shocks him, causing Robert to wake up in a third layer dream with Eames. Robert also meets his father and picks up on his father's message that he should be himself and follow his own path in life.
I was disappointed that you tried.
Arthur gets the timing right and detonates the dynamite. It gave the entire dreamland a jolt, so everyone except Saito and Cobb to wake up again in Yusuf's first dream. Saito did not survive the injury. Of course Cobb knows this. So Cobb decided to follow Saito into Limbo. In Limbo, Cobb meets an older Mr. Saito. He then reminded Saito of their mission and agreement. Then they all woke up as the plane they were on landed at the Los Angeles airport. Cobb exits the plane and discovers that Professor Miles has taken him. Then he came home and saw his two children. Before meeting his children, Cobb turns his totem to see if he is still dreaming or in reality. Finally, we see Cobb hugging his child and leaving his totem on the table. I don't know if the totem will stop or continue rotating because the movie is over. How exciting and puzzling! You really have to be focused and concentrate to enjoy these movies, and that's become the hallmark of Christopher Nolan's films. And as for the ending, it was always a debate whether Cobb was in a dream or reality. But that was answered when Michael Caine asked the director. The content of the discussion is roughly as follows. Is the end a dream or a reality? What is the difference between dreams and reality? Christopher Nolan replied that if you see yourself on screen, it's real, and if you don't see yourself, it's a dream. So it's clear between dream and reality, and also the ending. Maybe that's it for the recap of the movie Inception. I'll be back. I love you all.